Okay, it's 9 o'clock. Welcome, everybody. Good to have you here this morning to our Sunday morning Bible class. We are studying we're in the divided kingdom right now in a 3.5 year walk through the Bible. Hey! And so we are today in the area of, it's lesson 8, and we're in the area of 1 Kings chapter 19. Okay, so as we are in lesson 8, we're actually going to be starting on question 3 of lesson 8. But as we are want to do, we're also putting into our general knowledge the idea of the time periods that the Bible is split up into, and so these next slides represent those, and we will go through these together. Before the flood, the scattering of the people, the patriarchs, the Exodus, wandering in the wilderness, invasion and conquest, the judges, the united kingdom, the divided kingdom, Judah alone, the captivity, return from captivity, the years of silence, the life of Christ, the early church, and letters to the Christians. Okay, so here we are in the time of an entire class is spent on this relationship between Elijah and Ahab, because it's a great one. So let's go ahead and go through that. As we take a look at this chart, we're again reminding of where we are in the times of the divided kingdom. There's a lot of names, a lot of kings that fly by, and in the green area over there on the left side of the chart, you can see that's talking about the kingdom of Judah in the time of Jehoshaphat. And over on the right side, the northern kingdom, we are in the time of Ahab. And of course, the relationship with Elijah is what we're talking about. Some of the important applications we want to make sure we get out of this particular lesson is that we may feel alone in our faith in God, but we have our brethren. God is always there, so we need to remember that. God is always in control, and we should not lose trust in Him. And finally, there are consequences and punishment for wickedness and sin. So, of course, we want to avoid those things. We went through questions 1, 2, and 3. I'll just flip through here. We're talking about the time of probably Elijah's lowest point in his morale and his confidence and his faith in God. Very lonely for him, felt like a very lonely period. And so we went through the story of how God sent an angel to him to help out. And with this map, we talked about where Elijah and his travels had gone to, and a little demo this morning for Titus here. They started up here in the Jezreel area, and there's our friend Jezebel, and traveled all the way down, got down to here, left his servant here in Beersheba, went a day's travel south of that, met the angel, got refreshed, and made it all the way down to Mount Horeb, or a mountain we might know as Mount Sinai, where the law had been given long ago. And so as a result of that, that's where we find Elijah as we start our class today. So question 3, how does God show Elijah that he is still in charge, and what does he tell Elijah to do in the wilderness of Damascus? Now, at the top of that chart was the wilderness of Damascus, all the way up here. So we're going to be talking about God's plan for Elijah to get back up there and do some significant things. But he's right down here right now, very discouraged. So we're going to see God in action here as we look at this. So let's take a look at how God, in his ultimate wisdom and the ability to look at a person's heart, the love which he has for his servants, let's see how he works with Elijah here. So we have this famous phrase that God uses, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" And so what was the first, so I'll give you the first one. Elijah went down and hid in a cave down at Mount Horeb, okay? And so then God comes up with this phrase right here, and speaking to Elijah, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" And so what is Elijah's response to this very good question? Okay, yeah, you've heard of the pity party before, okay? I mean, sometimes when we are in pitying ourselves, all of a sudden our blinders start getting smaller and smaller, and pretty soon all we can see is us, right? And nobody else. There's nobody else to help me. Nobody else is around. Yeah, so he expressed his desires to God. And Todd, would you read verse 10 there of 1 Kings 19, verse 10?
He said, "I have been very zealous for the Lord, the God of hosts, for the sons of Israel have forsaken your covenant, torn down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. And I alone am left, and they seek my life to take it away."
Okay, so Elijah here is expressing his fear to God. I mean, he's emptying it all out, and you can see his perspective. From his perspective, he can only see himself right now. And in the whole wide world, he's the only one that's out there. Now, how does God respond? How do you respond to somebody that's totally at the bottom there? What is it that God asks Elijah to do to start this recovery process? Go out and stand at the foot of your cave so you can see, out on the mountain, all right? So now, has anybody else ever been in this position before? On Mount Horeb? Sounds a lot like Moses here. Remember how mad he was after he broke the first stones and he came back up the mountain and everything? Yeah, okay, so God's going to start this recovery process. So he tells him to go stand on the mountain before the Lord. And so what happens? Oh, okay, so God starts expressing himself in many ways that he does as the creator of the universe, all the power that God has there. And so you get a strong wind, you get earthquake, you get fire. But what does the scripture say about where God is at this point? Yeah, God was not the fire. God was not the wind. God was not the earthquake. These are results of God's power, him in control of the creation. But yeah, he's not in there. And how does he wish to express himself to Moses? See, I'm thinking of Moses now. My fault for bringing it. To Elijah. How does he express himself? That's exactly what I thought of too. The still small voice. It was a gentle blowing sound. After all that, I mean, you can imagine the sounds of the earthquakes and all that going on. And he expresses himself instead in a gentle blowing sound. And so as a result of that, what's Elijah's realization after all of that has occurred? And you can tell what he's realizing by the way he acts. What does he do? He covers his face. And again, anybody else reminded of the impact on your face facing God? You remember Moses with the veil, having to wear the veil because it scared everybody as his face was going? Yes, he knew right away that something big was happening right here. And so he covers his face, and he heard then a voice. Now, isn't it interesting, after all the turmoil, all the noise, the power and everything, the thing that he's listening to is that calm, still voice. And what does the voice say? Elijah, what are you doing here? Did the message change? No, same message. But now Elijah's listening, isn't he? Well, let's see if Elijah's listening or not. What is Elijah's response to the Lord's question for the second time? It's exactly the same, word for word. It's almost as if he memorized it. How do you come up with the same exact words, especially after all of this? How do you come up with the exact same words to the creator of the universe? I mean, this is like the best excuse of all time, and he's got it down pat. So he expresses the same fears as before. And what is God's response? Oh, poor Elijah, I feel so sorry for you. Get back to work. Yeah, that's exactly right. This is our God. This is our God. Now we gotta do some application right here just before we move on. I mean, have you been down in life? Have you been at a point in life where you're just down because of circumstances and things around you? Life is now shrunk in like this, and yet that feeling of being alone is there. But are you alone? Was Elijah alone in all of this? Todd?
It's good to remember this isn't the first action of God, right? Elijah's been in this state of depression, and as he flees, God has been caring for him. He allows him some time.
How did he do that?
He sends his angel.
He sends his angel, right?
Provides him with food, allows him to sleep, gives him this place, reveals himself to him in a powerful way. Mm-hmm. And then the message of get back to work. And it's I think, helpful for us to see how to help a person who is in that state of despair and depression. There is sometimes a physical component of need that we should not ignore and provide for, but then don't neglect the latter part, which is, encouraging and exhorting the person to continue serving the Lord.
Yeah, what is it that the person needs at this particular time that will get them to realize God is? You can walk with God. Don't you leave him. He's not leaving you. He's still here. Same place. You can find him in the same place you found him last time. And if you can get your mind around that, then you can take the first step. Because there's a lot of steps to go from Horeb all the way back. Think of that, all the way back. Of course, he goes up the eastern side of Israel instead of up through the middle. He's not a foolish person. But so there's another assignment for Elijah, and it's to go up to the wilderness of Damascus. Now, what's he supposed to do when he gets there? What's that?
He's supposed to announce Ahaziah's king of Syria and Jehu king of Israel, and announce Ahaziah to take his place.
Right. These three actions there is an anointing that's going on. So this is from a position of authority. He's going to be providing the anointing for a number of people. Now, it's interesting that, God is the master and ruler of time and space, and so sometimes when we get information on this is going to happen, we're going to see this many times in the next couple of lessons. When this is going to happen to you, many times we're talking about you, your inheritance. Could be your son that's going down the road. In this particular case, who is actually going to, of all these three things, which of these three things is Elijah himself actually going to do before he's taken up into heaven? You didn't see that question coming. Only one of these three he actually does himself. And he leaves the rest for somebody else. Which one? Norm, did you? Ooh, good question. He anoints Elisha, that's right. And Elisha is the one that's going to be, it's going to be happening down the road, not right there at that time. But in so many ways, what you do today has an impact on what happens tomorrow, doesn't it? So you're following God today, there are positive impacts that are going to happen tomorrow. Your influence is a cause for that. And same thing with Elijah here. So Elijah is commanded to go up, to return to Israel, and he does. He heads all the way back up into the lion's den again. And so we have question 4. In verse 10 and 14, what does Elijah say about himself, and was it a true statement? Okay, and looking at verses 10 and 14 of the one that Todd read, it's exactly the same thing in verse 14. Is there any truth in what he's saying in there? Or what part is the... What is the false part? What's the truth part? Go ahead, Francis.
The false part, and he is so convinced that I alone am left, and they seek to take my life.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting? The only part that was false was the part he saw about himself. Everything else was a statement of fact of what had happened. And isn't that true of us many times? We put the mirror up and and the picture is not what we expected. Or maybe it is what we expected, but it's just not that you get the wrong mirror. And Elijah had the wrong mirror up for sure in this particular thing. Go ahead, Todd.
I've been noticing some connections between John the Baptist and Elijah here. And of course, we remember John is Elijah who was to come and comes in the spirit and power of Elijah. Mm-hmm. But that one episode where John's in prison and he sends a delegation, he's down, he's depressed, and he's not sure if Jesus is even the coming one at the end of his life. And Jesus' response is very similar to God's response here, where he's healing people. And in that episode, he continues to heal. And in these two disciples of John, he says, go tell John the things which you both see and hear. Mm-hmm. And so he's given Elijah here things that he can see and hear with this earthquake and this fire and the still small voice that remind him who it is he's serving. He's serving God. And whereas in this case, Elijah is going to have a couple more things to do, but pretty much hand it down to the next generation. Right. Jesus is that, the one who Elijah, or that John the Baptist was the forerunner for. And so Jesus is like Elisha in this analogy, right? The one who follows.
It's almost like a comet going through the sky. They appear and boom, and then a flash, they're gone, and away it is. And that's the way Elijah is. And yet that impact of what he does for that short period of time is so significant, as was John's impact. John didn't preach from the time he was a baby, and for the next 30 years tell you about Jesus, the Messiah is coming, No, it was something that came up, had a huge impact for a short period of time, and then was gone. So again, application for us, you can do some significant things in a short period of time and have a huge impact. It's not about longevity a lot of times. Okay, so Elijah feels alone. I'm left alone. And this was how he was going through there. God had not abandoned him, as Todd had talked about. And it's interesting that in our remembrance, we tend to think about the 7,000, don't we? I mean, that's the part that, there's 7,000 other people to be with you, so you should be encouraged. And that is encouraging, but what is the most encouraging thing of all that God said here? Was it the 7,000 people? Which is an interesting number. Thousands in the Bible tend to be an abbreviation for huge numbers. And 7 has what significance? But it's the perfect number. It's the sign of completion. So, again, thinking about that, there's a huge number of people that not as many as the entire thing, but there's a lot of people out there that are faithful. You just don't see them right now. So, again, we need to remember that. So, and that's where we come up with this, the 1 Kings 19 and 18. All right, question 5. Who brings an army against Ahab, and what were his demands? So now we're gonna see a total of 3 different battles that we're going to be covering over here the next few questions, and this is the first of the 3, and it's always involving the same group of folks. So who is it that comes down against Israel? Ben-Hadad, the king of the Syrians, or the known as Aram. When you talk about Arameans, Syria is kind of a modern term. We understand it's in that area of Syria today. But the Arameans, the Aramean language that is so prevalent in the Bible, in the original text, that is this from this area of the country of the world right there. Okay, so Ben-Hadad comes down and he besieges Samaria, and there are 2 different demands that Ben-Hadad makes. What is the first demand that Ben-Hadad makes when he is laying siege to Samaria? Francis?
Verse 3 states, "Your silver, your gold are mine, your loveliest wives, and your children are mine."
Okay. That's pretty tough. That's a tough demand, isn't it? And yet, what is the response to the first demand? From Ahab. Yeah, more or less. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No problems and everything. Oh, in negotiations, terrible. Ahab is not using the best negotiating techniques here. Okay, yeah, that sounds good. Oh, you like that? Well, let me add a little bit. So there was a second demand that by tomorrow, what were they going to have to do? Besides the silver, the gold, the beautiful wives, the children, what else was added to the list? I'm going to send you some tax folks. I'm going to send you some IRS auditors here, and they're going to go through everything you own. And whatever they like, they're going to take. What could be wrong? What could be wrong with that? So that's what happens with the second part of it. And is that a little too far for Ahab to go? Question 6? What was Ahab's initial response? And that was to the first demand. It was, yeah, okay, no problem. But what was his response to the second demand? Okay, calls everybody, all the elders, supposed to be the smart folks. All right, bring them all in. Okay. And what's their very brave response to this?
Don't do it. Don't consent.
Yeah, no, we can't do that. Do not listen or consent. And so they're going all in on this. So, question 7: the Syrians come up against Ahab and Israel on 2 separate occasions. All right, so. We're into the next thing. So let's go back one to here. Okay, so this is the response. What happens next? The Syrians are still sitting outside. Go ahead, Jesse. You look like you got the answer there.
Well, kind of this section is what I call AT&T. There's some ancient trash talk that takes place
Yes. Okay.
between Ben-Hadad So he says, the gods do so to me in verse 10, more also if enough dust is left of Samaria for a handful for each of the people who follow me. And then the king of Israel said, tell him, let not the one who puts on his armor boast like the one who takes it off.
Yeah.
So that fired him up, and they were drinking and having a good time, and when he heard that, he was like, all right, let's go attack.
Okay, so it looks like there's going to be a big battle here that's going to come about. Okay, so let's go on to question 7 now. The Syrians have come up against Ahab and Israel on 2 separate occasions. So who helped Ahab win these battles, and why would he do this? So, and this is a little bit, again, showing the personality of God and his patience and how he wants people to come back to him that have drifted away. And certainly that case here. So who was it that was going to help Ahab out in these situations against the Syrians being outnumbered? Yeah, shockingly the Lord. That's right. And looking at 1 Kings 20 and verse 13, and answering the question, why would God do this? I mean, look at this. Behold, a prophet approached Ahab, king of Israel, and the prophet was being sent by God to deliver the message. And this is what the Lord says. Have you seen all this great multitude? Behold, I am going to hand them over to you today, and you shall know that I am the Lord. What's God's purpose in bailing out Ahab? Is he doing it just to bail out Ahab because he's such a great guy and he's changing, you know? Go ahead, Shirley.
He's trying to get the Israelites to see that he's
Yeah.
bringing the Israelites back to him.
Who else was that phrase used against? So that you may know that I am the Lord. Pharaoh, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, and he never did come around, did he? Well, Ahab didn't come around except for a little bit, but yeah. And so then you have in verse 28, same chapter there, the real reason, the thing that's got the burr under God's saddle here, basically, and that is, it's not because of you, because I love you so much, Ahab, but look at this. Since the Arameans have said, the Lord is a God of the mountains, but he is not a God of the valleys, therefore I will hand them over to the great multitude, and you shall know that I am the Lord. Okay, so again, it's the irreverence towards God, not bailing out Ahab, that is behind God's, what he's doing here and everything. And God is, and you will respect him. He is holy. And again, the God of justice is being represented here. And Ahab just happens to be the one that is in the way in between here. So question 8, what does Ahab do that causes a prophet to deliver bad news to him? And what was his reaction to it? So now we're into the second battle, after the first siege. In the second battle, the Syrians are defeated again, but as in the first battle, it was not the Israelites who beat them, it was God who defeated them. So after the second battle, what does Ahab do that really makes God mad?
He makes the treaty.
He lets them off the hook. He pardons them. What was he supposed to do with them? Yeah, he was supposed to wipe them out. That's right. Who does this remind you of? What circumstances has this happened before? And same response.
Saul and Agag.
Saul and Agag, yes, absolutely. And it cost Saul everything. And we have the same situation here with Ahab. He had no authority to do what he did, to make a treaty, certainly. God wanted him destroyed. And again, remembering Saul. And so then we go to 1 Kings 20, verses 42 through 43. The ultimate result of it, another prophet comes in, says to Ahab, this is what the Lord says, since you have let go from your hand the man I designated for destruction, your life shall be forfeited in place of his life, your people in place of his people. And so the king of Israel went to his house sullen and furious and came to Samaria. So, in question 9, what did King Ahab want from Naboth, and what did he do when Naboth refused? Okay, so this little episode here takes place right after the second battle. And what mood was Ahab in, as we just saw from the scriptures?
Pretty upset, yeah.
Yeah, how would you describe, how does the Bible describe? There's two aspects to
Sullen and vexed.
sullen and vexed, angry and pouting anger. There's nothing worse than somebody who's pouting and angry at the same time. There's no realization of what's going on. Go ahead, Todd.
I noticed back in chapter 20, Hadad gets that covenant through flattery, where he says, we've heard that the kings of the house of Israel are merciful kings. And, that appeal of flattery only works on a prideful heart that's easily puffed up. And, in that position where you have the authority to kill and you have the authority to pardon, right? And he makes this pardon that God didn't authorize. That reveals Ahab's heart, just very self-centered and not focused on God's will.
Right, and so it's in the middle of this pouting stage that he's in, pouting angry stage. You can imagine this is the guy. I'd love. You can see Jezebel's response on this, Ahab's wife, and her response has to be in response to his actions on this. And so between the pouting and the anger, who do you think the anger was being pointed at? Many times, guys, this happens, right, in our households, and right? You can be angry at the boss at work, but you come home and all of a sudden there's your wife there, and it's an easy target. And ladies say, you're right. This is kind of stuff that happens in there, and so going back to Naboth here, the simple thing was Naboth in the right in what he was saying. I can't give you my land. Yeah, why was he right in saying that? It's an inheritance. They were not allowed to just do that. They could sell it, it is possible, but when would they have to give it back? Year of Jubilee, right? So it still keep in the same family. So let's take a look at Ahab's covetousness. He wanted Naboth's vineyard, and he had the same response as he did to the prophet, sullen and furious again as a result of this. And so he laid down on his bed and turned his face away and wasn't going to eat. And this is just made for TV. Question 10. What did Jezebel plot against Naboth and why? So what was it that got her kind of upset about this? What was it that she was going to do for her husband? I heard it.
I said, she'll get it for him.
Yeah, she's going to get it for him. How's she going to get it?
She's going to kill him.
Yeah, we're going to do a little land transfer here. We're going to transfer Naboth to the ground and the vineyard to over here to her husband. Yeah, and the response is, shows the real background of it here. His wife said to him, "Do you now reign over Israel? Like, who's in charge? Who's the king here? You or not?" Now, her background as a Canaanite, where was she from? Do you remember? Yeah, the Sidonians, right. So the Phoenicians, and again, related to the folks that lived in that area. And And so the normal action of a king would be to, if you want something, what do? Yeah, just take it. That's right. Write a law. It's mine. You're dead. And that's the new law. And until I want to change it again. And away it goes. So, yeah, so she's a little upset at this. He's being a wimp. So question 11, who did Elijah deliver a prophetic rebuke to and why? Well, it's Ahab and Jezebel. That's an easy one. But what is are they being accused of doing? Because this is after she carries out her plan. Go ahead, Jesse.
Murdering Naboth and taking possession.
Yeah, everything that she had planned to do, and God saw it through Elijah. Again, he delivers the goods on that, and then this prophecy, which we are all somewhat familiar with, says, "And you shall speak to him, saying, the Lord says this, in the place where the dogs licked up the blood of Naboth, the dogs will lick up your blood, yours as well." And Ahab's just, his response, "Have you found me, enemy of mine?" Same response as he always has. And he answered, "I have found you because you have given yourself over to do evil in the sight of the Lord." So again, the excuses are not going to help Ahab in this situation. Question 12. What was Ahab's reaction to the prophecy, and how did this work in his favor? And again, now we're really getting to see how God's patience and mercy in some pretty extreme circumstances can come about. He humbled himself. He finally got it. The message finally got through. And so in 1 Kings 21:29, that is the reason, because he humbled himself, because he has humbled himself, I will not bring disaster in his days. I will bring disaster upon his house in his son's days. So we want to remember that, because the part of the philosophy prophecy associated with Naboth and the dogs and the licking of the blood and everything, and it kind of is a two-stage process that goes on between Ahab and then into his son's reign. So again, the influence of something that happens. Did Ahab's son get condemned for what Ahab did? No, he very much is going to be guilty himself, yes. But the carry-on of the influence, there's consequences there that carry on down the road, and we're going to see that again. But yeah, in Ahab's family, they all followed the same path. Okay, so let's get into, that's lesson 8. Let's get into lesson 9, which is, again, the follow-up through this. We're still dealing with the end of Ahab, and we're going to get back now to Jehoshaphat. Now, this whole time, Jehoshaphat is ruling. He had a long rule over in Judah, and so again, we're dealing with this period of time. We can see in the black on the right, and Jehoshaphat's period of time over there on the left. And we're going to meet the son of Ahab, whose name was Ahaziah. And for the applications for this particular lesson, we're going to be looking at these things. One, Ahab hated the truth, and we must not seek only that which we want to hear. We need to surround ourselves with people who tell us the truth, not just what we want to hear. Jehoshaphat befriended a wicked family. That's going to cause some real problems. And spending time with wicked evildoers is going to cause our morals to decline. Micaiah's vision, one of the prophets we're going to meet, shows that if we do not have a love of the truth, God will send a strong delusion that we will believe what is false. So you've seen a lot of New Testament principles are going to be illustrated in this next lesson. Jehoshaphat remembered Solomon's prayer at the dedication of the temple, and sought God's help and received a great deliverance, God will always be there to deliver us, and we must fervently seek him in prayer. So God is involved. Jehoshaphat closely follows God, and so as a result, God is involved in many aspects of Jehoshaphat's history. And he has a long history, and it's a good history. And so that's something we want to keep in mind. So question 1, Jehoshaphat goes to visit Ahab after 3 years of war with Syria. And how did the two kings become allied? And what did Ahab ask Jehoshaphat to help him to do? So this next battle that we're going to be talking about is going to occur at Ramoth Gilead. Anybody remember what Ramoth Gilead was noted for? What one of the things it was noted for? City of Refuge. One of the east of the Jordan cities of refuge. So it had a significant point of interest there. So Jehoshaphat had a bad idea. He married Ahab's daughter. What a terrible idea. But he seemed to have this thing about love for his fellow Jews in Israel, and it seemed like it was always trying to give them an opportunity to do the right thing, which they never took advantage of. A lot of times they were at war with each other instead. But every time Syria decides to come down to have battle with Israel, Judah somehow gets involved in that, and it's, again, part of it is the loyalty associated with the Jews. So he had the idea that he was going to help Israel take back Ramoth Gilead. So question 2, Jehoshaphat agrees to help Ahab in battle if he would inquire of the Lord first. So how many prophets did Ahab call together, and what was their response? So 400. They love that 400 number, don't they? It was 450 over before, so they're down 50 from last time. Who were these prophets? What's that? False prophets. Yeah, these are some more prophets of Baal. Remember, Jezebel is still there. Okay, new recruiting has occurred, and so basically it says the prophets, their response was, "Go up, for the Lord will give you into the hand of the king." So Baal's prophets telling Ahab to go up and to do the battle. So question 3, at Jehoshaphat's urging, Ahab reluctantly consults one more prophet. So who was this man, and why didn't Ahab like him, and what was his prophecy? Ahab seemed to have the same response to all of God's prophets, didn't he? What was his response to Elijah? Remember when? Micaiah. Yeah, okay, so Micaiah.
I don't like what he says because he never says anything good.
Yeah, you never say anything good about me, so, I just don't like you. And so, so he was a prophet of God, and so Ahab says, "I hate him because he does not prophesy good concerning me, but evil." And of course, he comes up with the prophecy, and the first prophecy was what?
Yeah, all your 400 prophets are correct.
Yeah, exactly what they said, and of course, he's saying it so sarcastically, it really is hilarious. And Ahab doesn't buy it right from the beginning. You never say anything good about it. I know you're lying to me. I told you to tell me the truth. Like he wanted him to tell him the truth. And so the second was the Lord's prophecy, and it was a great prophecy. I'll just do this, and then we'll stop right here. I saw all Israel scattered on the mountains like sheep that have no shepherd, and the Lord said, "These people have no master, each one of them to return to the house in peace." And so the battle is not going to work out well for Ahab. All right, so we're going to start with question 4 in lesson 9 next week.